Sorry, I didn't recognize we were already rolling. So, hi! Today we talk about how we can help teenagers and their overwhelmed parents to be less addicted to social media. Oh, I can't cope with all these notifications!
Going on the internet to Google something is a life skill. And if you take the phones away from the children, we inherently say, oh, that life skill isn't good enough or it's not needed, but it is really needed in our DNA. And
a grown-up man rang and he was asking for some tools how to not use Tinder anymore. He refused to go to therapy because he says that's not really a big issue, but he's not able to delete it and he's fighting using Tinder for a month already.
And he calls you.
Yeah.
Sounds like most of the people I know who have some kind of a problem. Yeah, give me an advice, but I don't need, help.
You can't give a little child, a mobile phone. There's no need to use it to have it. So I think it's like teaching a child to walking next to the child growing up with with the social media. You have to, of course, be with them, teach them what you know, and if you want to teach somebody, you have to know what you're talking about.
I spoke to a student who said that in their school they talked about the conscious use of social media and things like that, but there were another student who said that in their school, absolutely not. They just said that AI is bad and don't write your essays with ChatGPT or things like that. The whole society, parents should be, educated in some form, or they should educate themselves in order to can help their kids.
Banning is not really a smart choice. It doesn't teach you the value of the technology, I think. And it sounds like an easy solution, just don't use your phone in the classroom. But this frontal education, we know, is really outdated. So something better or more meaningful could be incorporating the usage of technology.
Phones and other forms of media are neither good nor bad. It so much depends on how you use it. Self-regulation is a big point, but you cannot expect that from a child. They haven't developed their impulse control.
So you will now sign the statement that a parent is not evil if they set boundaries, right? They're not a bad parent then?
It is so important to set these boundaries and to be a good role model.
Hello, welcome and welcome back to the Standard Time Talk Show. Are you a social media addict? Are you offended by the question? Either way, this episode is for you. I'm your host, Reka Kingapop, and on this program, I'm joined by guests from all over Europe. We release new episodes every second Thursday, so don't miss out. Hit the subscribe button and set 12 to 24 alarms so you never miss an episode. By the way, you can also watch the show or listen to it in a podcast format on Display Europe. And don't forget to turn on the subtitles in one of the 15 languages. So, I'm the type of mom that likes to tell the kids to put their phones away at the dinner table, which doesn't aid my popularity. But in my mind, dinner time is family time, and that's when we have fascinating conversations about the world, politics, skibidi toilet, and sometimes the political history of toilets. Shout out to one of my all-time favorite dinner time topics, the Erfurt latrine disaster of 1184, when the combined weight of the assembled nobles broke the wooden flooring of the cathedral provosty building and landed the squabbling guests in the underground latrine cesspit, where about 60 of them drowned. I like to entertain my kids with stories like this, especially because this gives me an opportunity to explain how this incident gave the then 18-year-old Holy Roman Emperor Henry VI the opportunity to stabilize his power over the fragmented German regions. What a conversation starter, huh? But if I'm being honest, sometimes I too would rather look at my phone than converse. Except I should know better. After some research, I found out I'm not the only one struggling with screen time and their kids. More and more young people in Europe, Central Asia and Canada are using social media way too much, according to a survey by the World Health Organization. The proportion of adolescents with problematic use rose from 7% in 2018 to 11% 4 years later. And let's just guess that maybe the pandemic had something to do with this. Of course, some content is more harmful than others, Long-form talk shows featuring angry middle-aged Eastern European women have great mental health benefits, but short-format videos are super addictive and are proven to lead to academic procrastination among undergraduates, and it also poses risks to both the physical and the mental health of individuals. Yes, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube Shorts, I'm looking at you. Online platforms invest a lot into engagement. In practice, this means that they try to glue users to their screens as much as possible. Their incentive is not to benefit the user, but to colonize their attention. And indeed, the past few years have seen report upon report about the addictive effects of content platforms and social media sites. There are attempts out there to curb children's screen time. Ever the keen regulator, in 2022, China maximized video games at 3 hours per day for minors, and later also limited social media screen time and obliged platforms to heavily filter their content for child users. My home country, Hungary, just introduced a law at the beginning of this academic year demanding that schools take smartphones away from pupils for the entirety of the school day, causing immediate outcry and even firing a high school headmaster over the debate. But there are more cautious attempts too. The EU has a Digital Services Act that demands certain protections for young users, and they just opened a formal investigation against Meta, the company owning Facebook and Instagram, suspecting that they willfully don't comply with the DSA. But some argue that even though extended screen time affects our sleep and may be responsible for the lack of exercise, I'll blame that for this, and doesn't stop online bullying, the solution is not forbidding screen time, but the balanced use of social media. It always comes down to moderation, but moderation is so hard. Am I supposed to not check likes on my latest posts? How can I keep up with who pretends to have a perfect life if I don't scroll Instagram for hours on end? How will I see endless promotions for all kinds of invasive procedures on this face here? But more importantly, when content sharing platforms tailor their offer directly against the well-being of our kids and young adults, who's responsible for them and how can they intervene? Is there a cure to this madness? Today's experts can give us some hardcore advice. Fatima Ursula Kowanda-Yassin is a psychosocial counselor since 2022 and integrates nature into her counseling work and workshops through outdoor experiences and visualization work. She also researched the connection of environmental issues, Islam and Muslims at the Sigmund Freud Private University in Vienna. Dier is a Vienna-based psychoanalytic psychotherapist and co-founder of Verein Ergon. Ergon specializes in the treatment of media addicts. Karolina Tóth is a cognitive scientist who studied in the United States and spent 10 years in the IT sector. She has been working in her native Hungary since 2023 and is responsible for the Hungarian Sober November campaign, which aims to educate about conscious alcohol consumption, and the Digital Detox campaign for the Hungarian Blue Point Foundation. Kristóf Ábel Tarnay is a Hungarian journalist who has written much on education policy in several Hungarian media outlets. During his studies, he was a member of the Independent Student Parliament and has organized several protests advocating for the rights of students and educators. Today's episode is hosted in Vienna by the Alte Schmiede Kunstverein and the György Sebestyén Austrian Library in Budapest. Thanks to them for having us, and we'll talk a little bit more about them later. Hello and welcome. Thanks for taking the time to talk with us. We talk about social media and how it affects young people, not just young people, but mainly young people this time. And if you wouldn't mind, I would like to start with you, Fatima, because you work with young people directly a lot, and you also deal with their relationship with social media. What do you see out there in the field? Is it as detrimental as we like to be panicking about? Is it worse than we think?
So I think there are advantages, but also disadvantages. And when teenagers and children, of course, are supported by adults, by grown-ups, parents, teachers, they can learn to cope with it. If they know how to cope with it, if they know how to use social media in a way they can have an advantage from it, then they will have it easier also in their lives as grown-ups. We all have to kind of reflect all the time about the whole use of social media. I think when they learn how to use it and how to have limits and how, for example, I mean, in social media you can hear different opinions from all kinds of people. You can learn how to discuss issues. You can learn how to find your opinion. You can be in touch with people from all over the world. But on the other hand, of course, we know what pictures do to our minds, that it's very exhausting and overwhelming. So I think when they learn how to deal with it, it is an advantage. But it needs more regulation from the educational system. It needs more support from parents, teachers, and I think it also needs awareness. This generation which grows up with social media, they get so much more information.
Yeah, maybe just impulse, right? They get more impulses.
Yeah. But on the other hand, they have a very high awareness on issues where nobody has talked about them a couple of years ago.
Julia, you work specifically in the field of addiction, including defining and sort of circumscribing social media addiction. So tell us about this addiction from really like the professional side, because we use addiction often in everyday speak, and I think this means something different in casual language than it means for you professionally.
If you compare the forms of addiction, you could compare it, I think, at the best to alcohol, because alcohol is very socially accepted.
Okay.
And that's the thing we have to deal with social media addiction. We can't really avoid it. You see alcohol on each menu. You see phones on each table. So from a very early age on, you get a phone. It's mandatory sometimes in school, if you're older, to have a phone to do this and that, to get an account for different things. Many parents don't regulate the screen time, which is the first step to avoid conflicts later on. The earlier you start, the better it gets for you as a parent later on.
This is one of those topics between parents, like vaccines have become recently. We better not bring it up because somebody is going to try to tear somebody else's head off.
What we have found at the Blue Point Foundation or Kékpont Alapítvány is that we have given children the opportunity to use these technologies before we learned to regulate ourselves.
Oh yeah.
It's nice to say, like set rules and boundaries for your children, but most parents don't know how to properly use these technologies. We created campaigns for moderation, and our flagship campaign is Sober November, and we say, let's try for a month not to do something. And the same thing we did with Reality 2.0, we call it, our digital detox campaign. We don't want people to give up the technology. There is a very good side, as you mentioned, but it's very important to distinguish between the useful usage of the technologies and the aimless scrolling. It is really like a game addiction, like slot machines. At a slot machine, the highest point of dopamine is before you see what you get. Some social media platforms, the videos already start, you don't even have to choose, and it's the same kind of physiology within the system of a human. The point of realizing, why did I pick my phone up? Is it something that I want to do, or is it just pure habit?
I don't want to hear my own thoughts. That's why I listen to some podcasts in the shower, which makes no sense whatsoever. But then I start to think about my own life and responsibilities and say, oh, who wants that? In the shower? Let's come to you, Kristóf, because as a journalist, obviously, you utilize social media also before that, even before you started working professionally as a journalist. But you have also been witnessing a new attempt at regulating phone use, especially in schools in Hungary. Can you tell us about this new law and why this made a bunch of people upset?
Yeah, there's a new rule in Hungarian schools that in theory you can't even bring your phone. I mean, you can bring it to the school, but you have to put it away. In theory, the good thing in Hungarian legislation is that, okay, it bans the phone from school, exclamation point, yes, but it allows the teacher to say that, okay, in this class, we will use it. So it sounds good, but the problem is, it's kind of bureaucratic, like like everything in a country. Like you have to administrate days before that you will use phone like Kahoot or something else on your lesson. In my opinion, the ban is just partially justified, but the bigger problem is I don't think that it will on their own solve these problems like addiction, problems with socializing. If the student isn't motivated enough, it's not enough because they just sitting quiet, but they have to be motivated. They have to understand why learning this material is important. Without it, you can ban it, but I think it's not gonna solve the problem.
Now, if you like what you see and if you manage to make you laugh at least once, please support our work and go to patreon.com/Eurozine. This is the magazine presenting this show. You can pledge as little as €5 a month or whatever you can afford, and you'll get access to bonus materials and even suggest questions and topics. Now back to the program. Technically, it would be very difficult to extract puberty from high schools, which is like self-explanatory, the greatest distraction there. So obviously there's a couple of factors that you can't really deal with. The qualitative difference between digital tools, and I think phones are primarily the surface, but others as well, is that most of these applications are specifically designed by professionals to create addictions, right? As opposed to a crossword puzzle, which I've been addicted to, but that's my problem. That's not the technology.
Yes. If you talk about an actual pathological addiction, I don't think that just take the phone away from you for several hours will solve addiction. I'm not sure that just forcing you, to isolate you from the subject of your attention alone can solve it.
Going on the internet to Google something is a life skill. And if we take the phones away from the children, we inherently say, oh, that life skill isn't good enough or it's not needed, but it is really needed in our DNA. And banning is not really a smart choice. It doesn't teach you the value of the technology, I think. And it sounds like an easy solution, just don't use your phone in the classroom. But this frontal education, we know, is really outdated. So I think something better or more meaningful could be incorporating the usage of technology.
So as you say, taking it away or banning it or kind of saying the mobile phone and the whole social media thing is just something we need to get rid of. On the one hand, I guess it's good to kind of find free time of using a mobile phone. So just to make it like a topic to discuss about, to give the possibility, the opportunity to think about it, to hear the opinions of the pupils, because I think children they have their opinions and they have their competences and they have knowledge and they're not just kind of little humans who have to be adjusted. So maybe the children themselves know somehow they want to change something, but as soon as there is a pressure from outside, no, this is not for you, we'll take it away from you, then it will get a pressure against it. So when you make pressure, it will create pressure. Where you say that's mobile for a free time, I don't know, for example, 4 days a week we don't have mobile phones in the school, and then you have mobile phone Friday. I don't know, that's just a thought I have. So on Fridays you bring your mobile phones, the teachers can make a Kahoot or whatever. So kind of not being afraid of this whole thing, because it makes the whole social media issue bigger than it is.
For us at the foundation, we have a 7-day program for Reality 2.0, and we have set up the rules so much that, of course, if you think about it, you can't go 7 days without your phone or looking at the screen. We actually defined it as screens, so also no television, and using the phone for survival things like banking and responding to emails, but time boxing the emails. And for some people, it's also Duolingo and keeping your strike. But really, people report that they have a new way of looking at reality because they aren't supposed to take their phones, and it gives you a new perspective. For example, you can't buy maps anymore at gas stations. And if you are not using your phone to get around, how are you going to get around? You have to look where you're going before you leave home. You have to interact with people on the street. And it's really going back some way, but also using technologies in another way.
Especially as a pedestrian, using these digital maps is the worst thing you can do, especially in a foreign place, because it doesn't help you orient yourself.
But what
But
other
if you are
thing you
walk-
can use? But what you can use instead? I mean, I wouldn't be able to navigate here to this place without Google Maps. I would be absolutely incapable.
Well, what I'm saying is that sometimes these digital tools offer you something that's not significantly better than the alternative. I'm always thinking about why we try and regulate and intervene on the side of the user, and why there is very little intervention on the side of the producers. So why cannot legislation interfere, for instance, with these algorithms? They are tuned to make you addicted. Where do you think we should intervene?
The opinions are very diverse. I work for Safer Internet. It's an initiative which tries to give information to students, parents, and other people regarding media use, technology, and all that kind of stuff regarding modern media. So I go to primary schools and I ask them, what do you do on your phones or on your computer? You have little 8, 9, 10-year-olds telling you they play Call of Duty every evening for 2, 3, 4 hours. This is a good example of why it is so important to set some rules for the child. There are games for children where we know or we knew that they have elements of gambling in it. It's not a secret, and this just can't be. We have to prohibit that. We do have a lot of technologies already that can provide us help, but we have to use them. And just recently, last week, a grown-up man rang and he was asking for some tools how to not use Tinder anymore, technical solutions. And I said, I'm sorry, I can't give you the technical solution. He refused to go to therapy because he says that's not really a big issue, but he's not able to delete it, and he's fighting using Tinder for months already.
And he calls you.
Yeah, but he
Well,
does
that's
not have a
something.
problem.
I mean, he at least I think that's a big
That's what
step.
he thinks.
It's the first step on the way.
Also, sounds like most of the people I know who have some kind of a problem. It's like, yeah, give me an advice, but I don't need like help. I'm not a hopeless case.
I realized what I was going to agree with you on is that it needs to be self-regulated. I think we are talking around this idea of being conscious about ourselves and our decisions, and of course rules will give us some guardrails, but we know the human condition, and as you said, pushing for something creates pushback, and really looking inward and deciding, oh, I don't even feel really good about this, why am I doing this, will give us some new insight, hopefully. And the other thing that I thought was very interesting is that with a lot of other things in Europe, it's also on the end customer. And for example, car factories produce a lot of garbage, and I don't think they are regulated as harshly as the end customers are. And I think
definitely not shamed that much as the end customer.
Right.
It's
And
all based in shame.
And there is a lot of lobbying around this, and of course those gaming companies will have a lot more financial power to lobby against their regulation. So, like with a lot of things, I think there is power in the community, and talking about these issues, I think, definitely makes a difference.
Basically, plastics are a good example, because in America it started with there were an ad with a crying Indian when they trying to where this was the start of blaming the user instead of the polluter company. When Meta or TikTok talks about conscious use, I think it's very hypocritical from them. Of course, they should be regulated. It is hard, I guess, because. Yes, you mentioned food, like food is less regulated, for example, in the US than in the EU, and the problem is that that these multinational companies are really hard to regulate between borders, because they don't really care about borders. And even if EU trying to make some stricter rules like GDPR and so on, then they basically blackmailing us, like EU has stricter rules. We don't really get, or just limited version of Apple's AI tools or something like that. One thing is very important. I spoke to a student who said that in their school they talked about the conscious use of social media and things like that, but there were another student who said that in their school, absolutely not. They just said that AI is bad and don't write your essays with ChatGPT or things like that.
It's like abstinence, like it ever works.
But the other part of this solution is that the whole society, I mean, parents should be, educated in some form, or they should educate themselves in order to can help their kids.
Today's program is hosted in Vienna by the Alte Schmiede Kunstverein and in Budapest by the György Austrian Library. The Alte Schmiede Kunstverein is a literary salon literally residing in an old blacksmith's workshop, and you can find concerts, literary talks, and all kinds of discussions there, and the program is entirely for free, so go check them out whenever you're in Vienna. Andrássy University offers German language higher education in Hungary, giving its students coming from all walks of international life dual German and Hungarian degrees. The university offers interdisciplinary master and PhD programs in economics, law, political science, and history. Thank you to both of these institutions for having us. And now back to the program. I think it's a very important point that you bring in, which we talk very little about, is that the major victims in terms of age group of pseudoscience and conspiracy theories and disinformation are the elderly, yes. And we talk very little about this.
I wanted to come back to the issue of social media and dopamine and what it does to your mind and to your feelings. Helping teenagers, whatever person or adults, it doesn't matter who feels addicted or who uses the phone too much, make an awareness that it is a kind of a dopamine that you have when you post a picture, you post something on Instagram, TikTok, whatever, and you get likes. Yes, and every like makes you feel, yeah, that's great. You feel happy, you feel great, you feel important. Where can you get this feeling from outside of the internet? And what does it do to myself? And to reflect, now I've posted a video and I'm so happy that somebody liked it. Why is this important to me? Why does it make me feel happy? On the one hand, it's something biological. It's just something which happens to my body. And so I think that's something very important that's also has to be thought about, because when children, young people don't know what they like, what makes them feel alive, how it feels like when you meet a person in reality, and to be in contact, to be in touch, to make friends. The more they lose it, the more kind of a problem it gets to mental health, I think.
And I think this is a big factor with any kind of addiction, that it's usually some kind of a substitution, or substitution because you have either something lacking or you try to cover something up. And this takes me to the issue that we basically, at least, I'm thinking of a generation between, let's say now 10 to 20, with the kids that I raise and help raise, we forced them in front of screens during the pandemic, for some good reasons and for worse. And now we talk about them being on the screen too much. But some of them learned letters at the age of 6 on screens. So how do you then extract them from this world? Or how do we treat this, which is undoubtedly a trauma, like a generational trauma?
What I see more and more since the pandemic is that they also have big difficulties communicating. A lot of them avoid conflicts because it's so easy to avoid a conflict online. You just block the person or you're not friends with them anymore, or you say, I'm not talking about that topic, and then just talk about the things you like or that person likes, but it's not that easy in real life. So I do a little role play with the kids every now and then, and when they say, well, I had an argument with this and that child from my class, and we try to get a solution, and they find it so hard, they don't even know what to say. So I switch positions, I am them, they are the other person, and show them, how could you do that? You need a person who you can touch, who can hug you, and that's not possible with online friends, even though I think it's good to have them, and I encourage my grown-up patients to meet them in person. They do that every now and then, and they make very good experiences.
It has visible political effects, that people don't really have a culture of gaming out a conflict, gaming out an argument, and understanding that even though our positions change on digital maps, we still can talk to each other, we still can be interested in each other's points.
It's great that we're talking about this, and we've come a long way for alcohol. You mentioned, there is regulations and food regulations, and digital technologies and really screen time is, like 15 years old. So let's be hopeful about it and say we're talking about it and we're trying to figure it out and we're trying to be understanding of ourselves and of our children. And also, these things are designed by professionals for us to get hooked. For example, if you got 50 likes on every single Instagram post, you wouldn't check how many likes you got, and it would be boring, kind of. It's like a slot machine.
It's very important, the family background, like if they can get their positive feedback, they have a healthy self-esteem, if they are not just, your test wasn't perfect, how you dare? I mean, in this case, maybe they wouldn't that very badly need the justification, the positive feedback from and so on. So in this case, I think it's basically about mental health, and I guess there should be a billion things to fix mental health, but I think it's mainly or basically mostly a mental health issue.
Most of us who have gone through the reality 2.0, we have turned off notifications completely. And it gives you a sense that you are in control, as you said. So I will go on any social media whenever I feel like going on social media, and I don't get any notifications to distract me from reality.
I also think that the family background and the teachers and the community you belong in plays a huge role. I think the reason we have to talk about legislation is because we cannot think that whoever doesn't have that supportive background can be left to the wolves.
The most important message is that phones and other forms of media are neither good nor bad. It so much depends on how you use it. And self-regulation is a big point, but you cannot expect that from a child because they haven't developed their impulse control further enough if they're young. So that's not really a good idea.
That's one of the most important things that takes so many years to teach them, actually.
Yeah, that's why you have to give them some form of structure.
So you will now sign the statement that a parent is not evil if they set boundaries, right? They're not a bad parent then?
It is so important to set these boundaries and to be a good role model. If you're not a good role model, then you're probably not showing the child any alternatives.
It's you can't give a little child a mobile phone. There's no need to use it to have it. So I think it's like teaching a child to walking next to the child growing up with the mobile, with the social media. The older they get, the more you kind of give responsibility to them to cope with it. But you have to, of course, be with them, teach them what you know, and if you want to teach somebody, you have to know what you're talking about, what you said. If I'm, as a grown-up, as a parent, I have no idea about social media, how can I help my child? How can I make boundaries? How can I, if I don't know what I'm talking about, if I don't know what about the issue? The last thing I wanted to say is, I would like something like this kind of a discussion with youngsters. So teenagers, pupils, could talk about the whole issue and say what they think about it and what they experience, so they get lifted up as experts, because they are the experts in this. Of course, not only every expert needs somebody to exchange with and to learn, but that would be a wish of mine.
Yeah, but those little bastards chose school instead.
Yeah.
That's why they're not here. Thank you so much for spending this time with me so that I didn't have to listen to my own thoughts.
Thank you.
So, what do you think about social media addiction? Are you an addict in denial? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're already rummaging down there, give us a like and subscribe to our channel. This talk show is presented by Ursula, and if you haven't heard of it, you should check it out right now, because this online magazine trades in a scarcity item, and that's insight. Ursula publishes thoughtful long-form articles from more than 100 partner journals across dozens of European languages, and you have access to it all for free. Display Europe is the force behind this project. It's a content-sharing platform that offers you articles, podcasts, and videos about European politics and culture in 15 different languages. And yes, they also don't abuse your user data. I know it's a shocker. Check them out at displayeurope.eu. This program is co-funded by the Creative Europe program of the European Union and the European Cultural Foundation. Importantly, the views and opinions expressed here are those of the speakers and the authors only, and they do not necessarily reflect those of the European Union or the European Education and Culture Executive Agency. Neither the European Union nor the EACA can be held responsible for them. Not that we would mind them taking advice from us.